December 1972. The final crew returns, but not before they discover a scene of slaughter, the shattered remains of a Soviet lander, its cosmonauts ripped apart by something that left no debris, only violence. As the American crew was forced to wait hours on the surface, they saw the shadowy figures approaching their own module. This isn't science fiction. This is the last known combat report from the moon, and it explains why every nation on Earth has been too terrified to go back.
Please subscribe my channel and enjoy the stories.
Project Silence, the horror NASA left on the moon. It's been nearly 50 years since a human being walked on the lunar surface. Think about that. And in an era where we carry supercomputers in our pockets and talk about colonizing Mars, the moon, our closest celestial neighbor, remains a forbidden zone. History claims it was the budget, a simple shift in the financial and political landscapes, a Cold War trophy won, and the subsequent $20 billion debt was simply too much to maintain. The Apollo program was a landmark victory, but a costly one, and so the official story goes, we simply decided to quit. But what if that official justification is a lie? What if the real cost wasn't measured in billions of dollars, but in unspeakable psychological trauma and a terrified decision to keep us all safe from what's already up there? We were told the technology only allowed for mere hours on the moon. We were told there were no natural resources or significant scientific material forthcoming. But if the accounts of a terrifying chorus of whistleblowers, secret transcripts, and conveniently destroyed evidence are true, then the silence from NASA isn't about cost-cutting, it's about containment. In the case not closed, on Project Silence. The final footprint and the cost of silence. The most iconic moment in human history, the Apollo 11 mission. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. The names we remember, but the mission's real, unsanctioned legacy begins 3 days before landing in the cold, black expanse between Earth and Moon. As Apollo 11 coasted toward the Moon, Commander Neil Armstrong made a request to Houston that cracked the mission's veneer of calm professionalism. He asked for clarification on the position of the jettisoned third stage of the Saturn V rocket. After a nerve-wracking 3-minute delay, NASA informed him the massive booster should be 6,000 miles behind them. Armstrong's chilling reply would echo confusion and a mounting sense of dread through mission control. His colleague, Buzz Aldrin, had spotted something traveling on a perfectly parallel course alongside their vessel. This wasn't debris, this wasn't an optical illusion, this was an escort. Houston's immediate frantic attempt to explain it away as a loose piece of metal paneling was a poor cover for the truth they were desperately trying to process. Something was watching them. And it had the technology to keep pace with the fastest vessel humanity had ever built. Armstrong's 2-minute blackout. The horror truly began not on the Pacific splashdown, but in the immediate aftermath of that single giant leap for mankind. As Armstrong and Aldrin settled into the Eagle, an alleged 2-minute period of radio transmission failure occurred between the lunar module and Houston. This was not a random glitch. This was the moment of deliberate silence. It is claimed that during this blackout, Armstrong continued to transmit on a secondary health and welfare radio channel, a transmission never meant for public ears. The alleged transcripts from this channel reveal a level of pure terror that NASA has fought to bury for 5 decades. Armstrong allegedly reported seeing metallic objects at the edge of a nearby crater. He described buildings that seemingly led down under the moon's surface. He saw what he could only call metallic vehicles parked up in lines outside these massive non-human constructs. A city on the dark side of the moon. When Houston finally reestablished official contact, the communication was ice cold. Armstrong was ordered to withdraw immediately. When asked if he had successfully deployed his scientific equipment, his reply was laced with profound dread. He confirmed he had, but was consumed by one terrifying thought. The occupants of the craft I had seen were observing him and would easily remove the items he had just positioned. The message was clear. You are trespassing. The photographs Armstrong allegedly took with his chest-mounted camera, they have never been published. And the whispers among witnesses who spoke to Armstrong privately? That he admitted the sighting, freely expressing his belief that the craft were trying to actively warn humanity away from any further lunar exploration. IV. The bloodied debris of Apollo 17. The chilling testimony of whistleblowers suggests the silence wasn't based on an unconfirmed sighting, but on a massacre. In 2015, an article circulated from an anonymous source, a British psychologist, who claimed to have viewed confidential reports of further, secret moon landings after Apollo 17. But his most harrowing claim centered on the official last mission. The anonymous source claimed the crew of Apollo 17, Eugene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt, did not travel far from their landing site before making a discovery that froze the space program in its tracks: the shuttered, severely damaged remains of another landing craft. Next to the vehicle were the mangled bodies of a number of cosmonauts, all Soviet in origin. A tragic failure? No. The astronauts realized this was not a decompression or collision. All the wounds and damage were caused by a physical assault. The Russian spacecraft had been repeatedly torn and punctured by an unknown source. The glass faceplates on the dead cosmonauts' helmets were all smashed in an identical, violent fashion. The American crew immediately demanded liftoff, but they were told by a chillingly calm mission control that they had to remain on the ground for several more hours due to technical issues. During this forced confinement, the radio transmissions from the lunar module grew increasingly panicked. The two men claimed they could see shadowy figures moving around on the hills outside, gradually, deliberately making their way closer to the module. Apollo 17 was recovered, but the subsequent missions, Apollo 18, 19, and 20, they were canceled forever. The terrifying implication, whatever slaughtered the Russian crew, was now circling the last American crew, and NASA knew it was coming for them too. The sound of the hollow moon. The whispers of what Apollo 17 found are substantiated by the decades of strange phenomena that defy the science. Outer space music. In May of 1969, while orbiting the moon, Apollo 10 crew members, Gene Cernan and John Young, reported hearing strange, eerie noises emanating from the surface below, an unexplained whistling sound that the two men described as outer space music. Controllers were mystified. The official explanation, later attributed to feedback between VHF transmitters, is unconvincing, sterile, and ignores the astronauts' own genuine confusion. It sounds like an excuse, and a deliberate attempt to categorize a sound that simply shouldn't exist. But the real chilling evidence that suggests the moon is not a natural satellite at all comes from the seismometers the Apollo crews left behind. During the Apollo 12 mission, the command module's ascent stage was intentionally crashed back onto the lunar surface. The result was not the expected dull thud. Monitoring stations on Earth recorded a strange, persistent reverberation that continued for over an hour. The moon, the scientists reported, rang like a bell. The hollow moon theory states that the moon is not a natural rock, but an external shell for something far more sinister: a gigantic ancient alien spacecraft, or a space station created by celestial architects we can't comprehend. The prolonged echoing vibration is evidence of huge, empty, buried spaces, the vast network of chambers and tunnels that form the alien city witnessed by Armstrong. VI. The final warning: whistleblowers and cover-ups. The official silence is actively enforced. Just look at the fates of those who dared to tell the truth. In October 2018, the deaths of two prominent ufologists, both former U.S. military personnel who exposed NASA's secrets, raised a frightening possibility that the cover-up extended far beyond simple PR damage control. Sergeant Major Bob Dean was a former U.S. Army Sergeant Major who served in the 1960s. His claim? that NASA had secretly destroyed up to 40 rolls of film shot by the Apollo 11 astronauts. Dean often joked that the acronym secretly stood for Never a Straight Answer. Less than a week after Dean's death, Carl Wolf, a 74-year-old former U.S. Air Force sergeant and whistleblower, was crushed to death by a tractor in a fatal traffic accident. Wolf's testimony was perhaps the most definitive. In 1965, he was an electronics technician temporarily assigned to a nondescript hangar at Langley Air Force Base for NASA's Lunar Orbiter project. While fixing a malfunctioning machine, Wolf was stunned to see a series of images from the lunar landscape, complete with a whole city of mysterious alien structures allegedly situated on the dark side of the moon. He described seeing towers, domes, and mushroom-shaped buildings, a complete extraterrestrial city. He expected it to be the biggest news in history. It was silenced, and when he went public in 2011, he put a target on his back. The evidence is mounting. The strange objects following Apollo 11, Armstrong's terrified transmissions, the bloody wreckage of a lost Soviet craft, the moon ringing like a hollow bell, and the untimely deaths of those who spoke up. The question isn't whether there's something on the moon. The terrifying question is, what did NASA promise them, the entities on the moon, to buy our decades of silence? The human race dreams of the stars, but what if the only thing we've ever truly conquered is the ability to look away? We left the moon not because we couldn't afford to stay, but because we were ordered to leave. And in the decades to come, when nations finally begin to return, we can only hope our celestial neighbors haven't changed their minds about sharing this little corner of the galaxy.